the more completely we realize good in all its manifold expressions of health, wealth, and happiness, the more completely we express God. That is, the more God becomes personified through us. Both prosperity and poverty are states of mind. If we desire to erase the thought of poverty, we must go back to the thought of prosperity, an affirmation of the allness of good, the source of which is God. We are confronted with the revealing truth that poverty is lack of knowledge of God. If we had a complete realization of the allness of good and our oneness with God, we would automatically express abundance. Let us expand our consciousness of God as our source, the allness of good, by accepting the truth of this affirmation as we speak it.
Knowing God is my source, I express gratitude in a generous way, and I open my heart to receive money and good of every kind. This comes to me in increasing quantities through multiple channels and in a continuous stream.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary Ann. So Lao Tzu, the founder of the Tao, once wrote, "The key to growth or increase is the introduction of higher dimensions of consciousness into our awareness." The key to increase or growth in the introduction is the introduction of higher dimensions of consciousness into our awareness. So that summarizes not only ancient teachings, but what it is that we teach here, the Science of Mind teachings, which is that higher dimensions of consciousness, we do this through the type of prayer that we do called spiritual mind treatment by, again, speaking about the all that is, the source of all, in the greatest and most expansive way that we can bring our attention to, knowing that of course that presence is even way more than our human minds can imagine. But yet as we continue to increase our awareness through our words and through our thoughts and through our feelings, we literally expand in consciousness. A friend of mine, at one point in time when he spoke at one of our services, this was years ago, talked about, well, he could feel energy fields. And so what he said is he could tell after someone gave of themselves in some way he could feel the expansion of their aura. And so this was like a real eye-opener for me. And it makes sense when you think about it. The more that we give, the brighter and the more expansive our aura is. But it's also important for us to receive, of course, to receive graciously and thankfully and to give generously. All of this expands our ability to receive more and give more, to be in that law of circulation. It's a really powerful thing to think about. So expansion of consciousness is really what it's all about. The expansion of our awareness of these higher dimensions of life, this presence, which is by nature abundant, prosperous, and wealthy. Or we can just say God is prosperity, God is wealth, God is abundance. And let me just share with you a little bit about this word name that we use, because there's a subtlety to it that I think can really help us understand when we say in the name of God or when people say in the name of Jesus. Name, actually the word that was translated into name means nature. And if you'll notice in reading a lot of these ancient texts like the Bible, the names that were given to the people in the text talked about were words that demonstrated their nature. So Jesus representing a higher consciousness, an expansive consciousness, oneness consciousness. So from now on, when you hear in the name of, translate in your own mind in the nature of. So we are by nature, or we can name ourselves, abundance, prosperity, and wealth. That is our nature. No matter how things look in our lives right now, that is our inherent core nature because we are individualized expressions of the Most High. And I'm so glad you brought up the Abundance book by John Randolph Price because that's one of my go-tos in terms of the teachings about money in a really healthy way. Because what has happened, unfortunately, is our teachings and other modern teachings have been teaching people how to manifest. And if you think of money or things in this world as separate from God, then you can say, oh, that's materialism. And it can be. It can become materialism. It can become spiritual materialism. But if we remember that everything in expression, whether it's money, whether it's our physical bodies, whether it's our relationships or our homes, or whatever it might be, everything is an expression of the one source. And as long as we keep our awareness that it's all an expression of the one source, then we're not going to get caught up in what's known as craving. And so I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll get into that in a few minutes. So if we truly, and also this supremacy of consciousness is really key because everything comes from consciousness. Everything in our lives is a product of our consciousness. What does that mean? It means the belief structure that we have in our being, and which kind of makes up our vibrational, it does, it makes up our vibrational atmosphere, what we attract and what we repel. And the beauty of it is, it's not permanent unless we allow it to be. We, through our conscious mind, have the opportunity to redesign our whole subconscious mind to be more in alignment with higher truth, the higher truth of abundance, so that we are able to live that in our lives. We're able to express that in our lives. So it doesn't matter what your history has been up until now. This is a new moment of expansion, and it's your choice whether you choose to expand. And the way we expand is very easy. It's really very easy, and I'm going to be talking about some other ways too. But it goes back to our awareness of higher dimensions. Awareness of higher, if you can remember that Lao Tzu quote, the more that we are aware of the higher dimensions of life, which means the nature of the infinite invisible, which is infinite supply, and we keep reminding ourselves of that and that we are individualized expressions of that. We are never separate from it. That is the beginning and the starting point of increase. And Jesus, the great spiritual master, taught the supremacy of consciousness. Those of us who've been in the metaphysical Bible class have seen that over and over and over again. The supremacy of consciousness. It keeps coming back to that. When Jesus talks about the kingdom of heaven is within, he's talking about consciousness, a state of mind that we can cultivate. And the kingdom of heaven, of course, being the higher states, the higher dimensions of consciousness, the consciousness of oneness and wholeness and abundance. And so think of some of his well-known sayings or his well-known quotes. Seek first the kingdom, that kingdom of heaven consciousness, knowing God as source, and all else is added. Once we develop that consciousness, all the good that we desire is added. Whatsoever you desire when you pray, believe, and you will receive them. What is that? That's about restructuring our belief structure. And he says, I come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. I come that you might have life and all that life is and have it more abundantly. So Jesus was the ultimate prosperity teacher. So again, if you have a burning desire for increase in all areas of your life, relationships, loving relationships, vibrant health, creative expression, your vocation, the way that you express yourself in the world, career, whatever that might be, vocation, or financial freedom. I love the term financial freedom because I think that's what it basically is having enough money so that we have plenty to spare and share and to be able to offer our gifts in ease and grace on the planet. So if you have a burning desire for increase in any of those areas, then it's time to intend an expansion of consciousness, the consciousness of abundance. And we did that at the beginning of the service, so I think we're all ready to go, right? Yeah. So to expand, what I'm going to focus on today is allowing the flow of God's bounty. And that begins with letting go of some self-limiting beliefs. And so I wanted to focus on 3 particular self-limiting beliefs that we want to let go of right away, and that I think will take us enormously, much farther than we have in the past. And so the first one is, I don't have enough money. And so here's the underlying belief in I don't have enough, any type of lack thinking. The idea is that not only do I not have enough, but I need what I think I must have now in order to feel better. And so what that does is it puts a lot of stress on the body, on your mind, on your emotions, if you're noticing what's missing, if you're thinking that you're lacking what you need. So there's a tendency then to, okay, so the lack gives you a sense of stress. So there's a tendency then to go and try to alleviate the anxiety and the stress by spending. And it gives many a temporary relief. Unfortunately, what happens though is it gets you caught in what's known as a scarcity loop of overspending and then having the negative outcome of the financial situation getting worse. And so then you go back to reinforcing the fearful thought, self-limiting thought that I don't have enough money. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So eventually we realize that the long-lasting solution does not lie in getting more money or winning the lottery or earning more, any of that, or purchasing more. We realize that there's something more to this than just that physical thing called money. And so that awakening then begins to move us into another possibility, which is the abundance mentality that goes along, that is the opposite of this belief, which is to begin to feel grateful for what we have. Whatever source of income we have is when we begin to give thanks for it. Again, what I talked about, our aura expands, our ability to receive more expands, and we begin to feel a sense of peace as we focus on and give thanks for what we have before us. So do you see how by giving thanks for what we have, we're moving ourselves into a higher dimension. Gratitude is a higher dimension than fear. We're moving ourselves up the scale of consciousness. And in those higher dimensions, we're able to receive more. So notice what happens if I'm grateful for my paychecks and I'm at peace with my money, then there won't be a tendency to go out and overspend or buy things that we don't need. So even if the ego starts tugging at us and saying, go out and get more stuff, we feel empowered to say, no, that's not my decision right now. I instead choose to save more, to save wisely, to use my money more consciously. There's a beautiful curriculum called Financial Freedom that we have available to us, and some point we'll teach it here. And I taught it some time ago, and it taught these very simple principles of saving 10%, tithing 10%, and living on the rest, and how when people discipline themselves to do this, they experience increase in phenomenal ways. But again, it goes back to the state of mind, the vibration that we create in ourselves with the practice of gratitude. And gratitude, by the way, is the go-to spiritual practice for increasing financial abundance. So I actually gave everybody a handout that you could use that actually was intended for last month, and I thought, it actually fits better for this month because it's focused on keeping track of what we're grateful for in just a few words every day. And there's enough there for 2 weeks, and I invite you to continue that practice. Gratitude on a regular basis will truly bring a greater awareness of all of the abundance that we have and get you into that state of mind of increase. So the more that we manage our money well, and the more that we develop this gratitude consciousness, the more, not only the more that we attract to us in the future, but we also experience something called spiritual fulfillment. Spiritual fulfillment. The next self-limiting belief is there's never enough time. Anybody recognize that one? And this is a story that we tell ourselves because of all the things that go on in our lives. Many of us have very full lives, families, friends, work, all kinds of social activities, things that we want to be part of and participate in. And if our minds are constantly on, oh my gosh, I have so much to do, we're in lack consciousness. It's a lower vibration, it's a fear frequency. And so what's going to happen again is we get caught in this scarcity loop, or lack. I don't have enough time, and then when I focus on that, I'm overwhelmed with too much to do. And this is the interesting thing that happens. In overwhelm, when we're in this fear frequency, our minds are very distractible. We hop from this to this, it's kind of like channel surfing. You hop from this to this to this to this and get distracted and go off in this way and so on. And so there's not that laser focus that takes place in higher states of consciousness, of being in the present moment totally with what you are doing in that moment. So then, because things are not getting done, there's great frustration, which reinforces again, I don't have enough time. So if we want to break that cycle, we then move onto the abundance loop with the idea, I am thankful for this moment. And one of my favorite Buddhist ways of doing that for myself is I breathe in, I calm my body, I breathe out, I smile. I'm in the present moment, and this is a wonderful moment. So I'm grateful for this present moment. This is a wonderful moment. So when we're grateful for the present moment, we then cultivate peace of mind. We then cultivate the ability to focus on one task at a time, or on one person at a time. If we're with a particular person, we're able to give them quality time. Our minds aren't distracted and jumping all over the place with, oh, I've got to do this and I've got to do that. We're totally focused. So we have positive outcomes in our lives. We have greater quality in our relationships. We have our tasks get done in a more graceful manner, and we find out we have more spare time, to do what we desire. What I've heard people say, and I know I experience this myself, that when the days we do our spiritual practice in the morning, meditating, doing our spiritual mind treatment, oh my gosh, on that day it seems like we have all this time, because what we've done is we've raised ourselves into those higher frequencies, those higher dimensions of consciousness, where focus and wise use of time becomes a natural thing throughout the day. Isn't this beautiful? Anybody notice when they meditate they have more time? I know I do. Okay. So the third self-limiting belief is money is the root of all evil. This came through a mistranslation of a biblical verse that actually translates, and this as, for the craving of money is the root of all evil. And it's not just the craving of money, it's that consciousness of lack. That's what craving is. It's like, I need this in order to be happy, kind of thinking. And evil is an archery term that means missing the mark. It means we're off track with what's going to provide us the most delightful, joyful experience of life. So when we're into lack consciousness, so it's really teaching about lack consciousness. And the word money could be substituted for anything that we think is going to make us happy. It's just a representation of external things. Anything in the external world or in the world of effects that we think is going to make us happy if we have it, or we feel like we can't be happy until we have it, then what we're doing is we're allowing ourselves to be caught on this scarcity loop. So if you think money is evil, or if you think anything like that is evil, then it's going to scare you, and you have judgments about it. And guess what? Money is energy just like anything else. If you're scared of it, if you call it bad, do you think it's going to run towards you? No. You're going to repel it. There's a law of attraction. There's also a law of repulsion, where you literally push it away. So here's some of the subtleties with that. If we have a judgment about money, then we're going to have a judgment about people with money. And so the term filthy rich, that's one of the ones that comes up. But if we understand, again, that money is, and I got this from John Randolph Price, my own natural energy yield. My own natural energy yield. It's an acronym right there that spells out money. If we realize it's just simply the product of our energy, the energy that we give, and the quality of it, then we realize that this is something that is divine, because we are divine and energy is divine. And money being the outpicturing of our energy or anybody else's energy is divine. And it's really our attitude about it that needs to be shifted. To stop craving it. Stop thinking that it's gonna be the thing that will finally make you happy. Instead, we use money as a way to experience the good in life. It's a beautiful way of exchange. Some brilliant person came up with this idea as a means of exchanging our goods and services. So if we call it a good thing, and that it's part of our life experience here on the planet, it's a whole different experience. So again, if I'm on that scarcity loop, Money scares me. I hate money. We think it's dirty. I don't try to earn it, or I don't try to earn a lot and I don't save. And then the negative consequence is there's no money, which reinforces the fear of money. So again, if we make the shift, and by the way too, people who win the lottery who are in this scarcity mindset that I talk about, what happens to them like 5 years later after they had the money, or sometimes even sooner? They're not only broke, they're in a worse financial situation than they were before they received the lottery, because that scarcity loop causes overspending, spending on wild schemes, whatever it might be, and not the good management of it. But then we move ourselves into abundance mentality again with an attitude of gratitude. I am thankful for the money I have. I'm thankful for the income that I have, realizing it's my own natural energy yield. I bless it, I honor it, I give thanks for it. And since it is directly from the source of all that is, I realize that is truly God in expression, just as I am God in expression. And one of the things that John Randolph Price said at one of his workshops is he and his wife at some point decided to see money as the way that we share love. And so if you make that shift and begin to see it as the way that I share my love, then every time I pay a bill, I bless it. And I give thanks for my opportunity to share my love with the electric company or whoever it might be. I'm sharing my love. And so sometimes people will write on that little line on the bottom of their checks, "Thank you, God," to remind themselves of the source of that flow and to stay in that vibration of gratitude. So again, if I'm in that gratitude loop, I'm thankful for my money. I am at peace with my money. I do my best to allow my money to be used wisely. And I have a healthy relationship with money. I begin to see it as, I'm extending my love to others. So here's the way I'd like to end this. And I just thought this was so beautiful. The parable of the fishes and the loaves is a beautiful teaching of prosperity when understood from the metaphysical level. So let's take a look at the principles that we just talked about in this beautiful little parable. So Jesus said, "Bring them," meaning the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, "to me." So what did he do? He focused on what he had, what was available in the present moment. And then it said, he directed the people to sit down on the grass. So you can imagine the people, like they're hungry and they're getting all stirred up and stuff like that. That's sort of like our thoughts, our lack thoughts. So we want those thoughts to sit down for a moment so that we can consider other options. So we literally bring ourselves into the present moment, breathe, and settle our lack thoughts for the moment. Start moving into a higher perspective. So then he took the loaves, and the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, looked up to heaven, and gave thanks, looking up to heaven. Okay, so he's taking what he has, he's looking up to heaven, he's lifting his consciousness into higher vibrations and gives thanks. There's the energy of gratitude. When we give thanks for what we have, we're raising ourselves into those higher dimensions again. And we are realizing that everything is the supply of the one, and we are expanding our opportunity to receive more and to give more. And then it says he broke the loaves, an awareness that gratitude, which is a form of divine love, helps us break those old patterns of limitation. And then he gave them to the disciples. The disciples actually stand for those higher faculties of consciousness. Each one of the disciples, we learned in the metaphysical Bible class, stands for different qualities of our divine nature. And so he gave them to the to the higher faculties to be distributed. So now we're able to distribute what we have in a mindful and a wise way, right? And then the disciples gave them to the people. So then the people, again, remember, are all the lack thoughts. So as we begin to give evidence to our old patterns of thinking, that wow, this is how it works. We live in gratitude, and we experience more peace, and we experience more love, and we experience a greater flow of good. Then all of those people, those thoughts, begin to be transformed and to come along for the ride of joy and abundance. And then finally it says, and the disciples picked up the 12 baskets of broken pieces that were left over. 12, by the way, the ancients used numerology, and 12 is the number of fulfillment. There were 12 baskets of broken pieces that were left over. So it's the symbol of spiritual fulfillment, of knowing that the lavish, unfailing nature of the divine is within us, and that we have the power to express it and to bring that good not only to ourselves, but beyond that. And so I invite you just to say with me, and so it is.
So it
Amen.
is.